Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you've been part of the Commodore community for any length of time, you're probably familiar with Gideon's Ultimate 2 cartridge. But for those who don't know, this is the definitive peripheral for the Commodore 64. It plugs into the expansion port and can operate as a regular cartridge, RAM expansion, floppy drive, tape, and a million other cool functions. Most of the cartridge's functions are accessed through a menu screen that is launched by pressing this button on the rear of the cartridge, which is perfectly fine if you have a traditional desktop setup. However, I'm on a quest to turn the C64 into a living room console, which is why some time ago I developed the Blue 64, a plug-and-play Bluetooth adapter that connects to the keyboard header inside the C64 and allows to control the computer with Bluetooth controllers and keyboard. Despite all the convenience though, I still need to get off the couch to press the menu button on the Ultimate 2 cartridge every time I need to change game disk or change game entirely. So in this video we're going to see how we can use the Blue 64 not only to control the C64, but also to launch the Ultimate's menu from the comfort of our couch. Before we dive into this though, I want to address two smaller issues I have with the Ultimate 2. First of all, I'm not the biggest fan of having a USB stick popping out the side of the cartridge. I've always felt that it takes away from the cleanliness of the setup, as you now have a thing plugged into a thing plugged into another thing. But this point is by far the easiest to address. On Amazon I found a miniature thumb drive that blends in quite nicely when plugged in, and I believe there are even smaller options available. The second issue I have with the cartridge is the floppy cable, which extends from the side of the cartridge to the back of the computer. It's quite long and bulky, and this loop once again makes the setup look a bit messy. Another issue with the cable is that it tends to interfere with the video output connector, and the problem is even more pronounced with my HD64 mod, as the floppy cable runs right in front of the HDMI connector. I'm well aware that Gideon had to choose one size that would work on all supported C64 variants, but there's nothing preventing us from making our own. So I designed these 3D printed caps that can hold a standard DIN 6 connector. With these and any piece of cable with at least 6 wires, we can build a tailor-made floppy cable that runs nicely flush to the enclosure, out of the way and out of sight. A piece of cable from an old Commodore joystick will do the job just fine. DIN 6 connectors can be easily purchased online, and the cap design is free to download on my GitHub page. With that out of the way though, let's dive into the main topic of controlling the Ultimate 2 wirelessly. The first thing to note is that the buttons on the Ultimate 2 are active low, which means my goal is to connect the menu button to some active low control signal coming from the C64. Unfortunately, the cartridge port doesn't really have unused pins, but it does have 4 ground pins, so we could in principle convert one of these pins to carry a control signal for the menu button from within the C64. To achieve this, we need to cut the trace between the ground pad and the nearby via on the Ultimate cartridge and drive a wire all the way to the menu button. On the computer side, we need to disconnect the corresponding ground pin and attach it to a control signal of choice. I decided to use the restore output from the Blue 64 for this purpose, since it's active low and I don't really ever use it. In order to avoid strange side effects, I also decided to cut the restore line coming from the keyboard header, so that activating the Ultimate's menu won't trigger the actual restore key. One nice aspect of this mod is that since the restore output of the Blue 64 is open collector, I can keep using regular cartridges which will simply short the control pin to ground with no risk of damaging any components. However, one important caveat is that our modified Ultimate cartridge will not really work with an unmodified C64, as the menu button will be constantly grounded on the computer side. While there's still no risk of damaging the cartridge or the computer, the menu button becomes unresponsive, rendering the cartridge more or less useless. In conclusion, despite a few quirks, this mod was well worth it, and I'll be enjoying the comfort of switching games or demos without having to get up from the couch. Anyway, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all next time.